Growling in the Shadows. Written by GayBatBoi. Read to you by Evie is Evil. Chapter 3. Summary. The League returns to Gotham. Enter Bat Brothers. Author's notes. Thank you to everyone reading this. I'm so happy people are enjoying it. Added trigger warnings for the birds' deaths, since it affects their appearances. Dick/Nightingale. Fell, broken bones/blood. Jason/Cardinal. Explosions, burns, blood. Tim/Magpie. Neglect, weight, unhealthy appearances. Damien/Robin. Stabbed, blood. Also, I didn't know how to make it clear while writing, but Jason's red hood is literally a hoodie type hood, not a helmet. Now, on to the fic. Superman set Green Arrow down once the League landed at the Hall of Justice. Oliver muttered a quick, unhappy thanks, and they all headed inside. Everyone took their usual seats around the table. "All right, Superman, what did you learn?" Diana got straight to the point, as usual. Clark sighed. He had given them the quickest rundown he could. The briefing still ended up being over half an hour. Flash and Arrow kept interrupting to ask questions or yell. "So he is a vampire, or they are, I guess. Either way, I was right." "Idiot, he clearly just said they don't know what they are. I'm so not giving you any money for that." Clark had had way too long of a day for this. Jean interrupted Barry and Ollie's fight.
"Well, the citizens clearly viewed the Batman and his brood as protectors, if they're leaving gifts for him. I don't know, Jean. He did tell me that the birds make people disappear. That seems more like a zombie mob than superheroes." "Yes, but you said that the Batman does not kill. We can hardly judge him for his associates' actions. We did not go to Gotham to recruit the birds." "I suppose you're right, but if we're going to try and recruit him, we should bring gifts, though, as a sign of goodwill."
"I agree, Superman," Diana chimed in.
"Why would vampires want gifts?"
Oliver groaned at Barry's questions.
"Flash, I swear, if you don't shut up about vampires, I'm going to ask the Bat Guy to eat you. We'll get to see if he's a vampire, and you'll be quiet. And the Bat gets to eat. Win, win, win." "I don't win,"
Flash muttered petulantly. Clark rolled his eyes, but honestly, he was mostly used to the duo's antics by now. Diana turned towards him. "All right, you told us what the birds like for gifts, but what does the Bat like?"
"Fuck."
"You didn't even find out what Batman wants?"
"The guy didn't mention it. I'd like to see you keep track of all this information while walking through Gotham."
"Come on, that's the one reason we even went." "Flash, drop it. It's all right, Superman. We shall get gifts for his children and hope that this is enough to appease him." Clark did feel a bit bad. He did, however, doubt that Barry could have remembered half of the things he had. It would be fine, right? It's not like the Bat was a god demanding an offer or anything. Shit, was that what was happening? He was definitely not about to throw himself under the bus with that hypothesis.
"The sun just set over Gotham. Supposedly, the Bat only comes out at night, so he's likely not active yet. I vote we split up and each get a gift, then reconvene here,"
Martian Manhunter proposed. Everyone agreed that this was a good idea. They needed gifts, and heading to Gotham now wouldn't help anyone.
"There's 5 of us, but we only need 4 gifts, since someone didn't find out what bats he wanted."
Clark was so going to make sure Ollie froze next time he flew him somewhere.
"Who's doubling up?"
"Arrow, you and Flash can team up for this one," Diana said. He was pretty sure she also didn't want to team up with either of them. It would be cruel to dump one of the Chaos duo off on Jean as well. Clark gave a small smirk.
"Oh, why do I always have to team up with someone?"
"Well, you could walk, Ollie, but I'm not sure you'd make it back in time." Arrow frowned but didn't argue. Clark thought he heard a very quiet, stupid, speedy jerks come from his direction, though.
"All right, the list the guy gave me was a brightly colored blanket or hoodie, a classical book, junk, I guess, and a stuffed animal. Who wants what?" "I will probably be best suited for the so-called junk option," Jean stated.
"I call stuffed animal!" Barry jumped up. Clark and Diana looked at each other. "I shall get the book." That left Clark with a brightly colored hoodie.
Good with me. Everyone get your item and meet back here. Try and pick something good. We do not want to offend the bat the very first time we meet him. Don't take any longer than an hour. I don't want to catch him at the end of a patrol."
The others grimaced in sync. The end of patrols sucked. Everyone was tired, sore, and ready to go to bed.
"Good luck."
Flash saluted, grabbing Ollie, and left with a burst of light. Martian Manhunter nodded and disappeared through a wall. Diana and he walked to the entrance before heading their separate ways. Superman was in a random store in Metropolis. It's not as if the city was too far for him. He could travel around the world in a heartbeat, and he didn't feel comfortable shopping in a different city as Superman. It wasn't until he was in the store that he realized he could have just changed and shopped as Clark Kent. That would have been easier. The people of Metropolis were used to seeing him, however, and only a few asked for autographs. Most of the people just waved, and he waved back. It would be rude not to. Metropolis was definitely better than Gotham, he thought smugly. Okay, a brightly colored sweater. What color? Shit, what size would he get? The man had said they were like kids, but the sweater is for the oldest. So maybe a teenager? A teenager who was decades old. Wow, his life was weird. Clark decided that an adult large would work. Too big was better than too small. He just hoped Nightingale wasn't 4 or something. He headed to the brightest clothes rack he could find. He ended up narrowing his choices down to a sweater that had a landscape of a bright yellow wheat field on it, with a bright blue sky, and a hoodie that looked like the carpet of a roller skate rink. Clark gave up and grabbed them both. Waiting in line and checking out as Superman was one of the more awkward experiences of his life. At least he'd remember to change next time. Maybe he should have just shopped in another city after all. He could have just pretended to be someone in a Superman costume. Clark sighed and flew to the Hall of Justice, his bag of clothes in hand. He walked into the meeting room to see Diana and Jahan already sitting down, presents in front of them.
"How did you do?"
he asked. It was going to take a minute for Flash to come back. Not only was he chronically late, but he also got distracted by any little thing, and he had Oliver with him. They may as well make conversation while they wait. They went well. I had to search through some of my old boxes, but I found my copy of Frankenstein. That is considered a classic, is it not? Clark nodded. Good. Mary was a good friend. I'm quite happy people are enjoying her writing.
"I didn't think you'd left home yet when she was alive."
I may have snuck out a few times. Anyway, I'm sure that the Cardinal will appreciate this copy. Mary gave it to me, but it has just been gathering dust. Better that it goes to someone that will read it.
"My ventures also went well."
Jahan joined the conversation. He showed Clark a shoebox that he had filled with an assortment of items. Clark could see screws, wires, a couple of washers, along with a few keyboard keys. Where do you even find those? And a tiny rubber duck? He wasn't going to ask.
"How did you fare, Superman?" "I forgot to change. Never making that mistake again."
Clark sighed.
"Other than that, it went all right. I wasn't sure which of these Nightingale would like, so I got them both,"
he stated as he pulled the 2 articles out. They are definitely bright, Diana smiled. I am sure the bird will like them.
"Thanks, Dee."
The doors flew open, and Barry zoomed into the room with Green Arrow on his back. Hi guys, look what we got! Flash dropped Oliver and grabbed the bag he'd been holding. Clark could hear a small ow come from the man on the floor. Barry dumped the bag out onto the table. We weren't sure what the bird would prefer, so we got a few.
"You got him a stuffed bat?"
Yeah, it's funny, he'll love it. Clark had to admit, it was kind of funny. He looked at the others and saw an alligator, a panda, a cow, and a cat. At least he wasn't the only one who went with the get more than one approach. He doesn't think Martian manhunters counted. He sighed.
"Well, I guess we better head back to Gotham before it gets too late."
They hadn't really considered how they would find the bat once they were ready. Clark didn't really want to stand in the street to get assaulted again, though, so he suggested the rooftops. They chose a high building, but not the highest. The League wanted the bat to be able to see them before they saw him. Hopefully, he would realize they were not enemies.
Should we have wrapped the gifts? Little late now, Arrow. Plus, they may assume it was a trap if they couldn't see what was in the boxes. Good point.
Ollie sat down on the roof. Clark shrugged and sat as well. Who knew how long they would be waiting? For all they know, the bat isn't patrolling tonight, or will choose to avoid them. Soon, they were all sitting together, waiting. Flash and Arrow played tic-tac-toe with the grime covering the roof. Ja'an seemed to be meditating, and Diana was reading the gift she brought. Clark wasn't fooled. All of them were on high alert, in case one of the bats or birds showed up. Gotham was eerily quiet at night, nothing like the bustling of Metropolis. There were few cars and fewer people. Soon, Clark began to hear birds chirping nearby. Wait, was that the birds? Were they actual birds? His sweaters were definitely not going to fit him if that was the case. He looked up and made eye contact with John. They both heard it, so he wasn't imagining it. Clark listened, but he couldn't make out any heartbeats or breathing. Okay, maybe they were undead. He refused to consider vampires on principle. Diana looked at Clark before standing up. Hello? Birds? We are the Justice League. We mean no harm. We've actually brought you gifts. A citizen told us things you may like. You can come out if you like, she said calmly. Wonder Woman was definitely the diplomat of the group. More chirping could be heard. It sounded off. He couldn't tell how, but something felt wrong about it. Sometimes a sound like a cat hiss would appear in the warbles and trills. They must be communicating with each other, so there was more than one. Clark wondered if Nightingale was one of them. He kind of wanted to see if the bird would like his gifts. A few minutes passed before he saw a shadow move. He slowly focused on the area, not wanting to scare the bird off. The bird appeared to be a young adult. He was crouching, as if ready to bolt. It was hard to call him a man. He appeared to be more of a man-shaped creature. Just like the chirping, something was just off. As the bird exited the shadow more, Clark could see him a bit more clearly. He definitely looked like a corpse. His face was pale, framing his white, pointy teeth. It was hard to look away from the mouth filled with sharp fangs, but when he looked up, he was just as unnerved. The bird's eyes were fully black, without irises or whites. A domino mask surrounded his eyes. His outfit was black, with bits of blue dripping through. Literally, it looked like it was blue blood. The blue flowed to his hands before tapering off. His fingers faded into inky black talons. The worst part, Clark decided, was how he moved. His movements were almost glitchy, not the smooth ones someone would expect. At a closer look, he could tell the reason. His bones had multiple breaks that had never healed correctly. Way more than someone should be able to survive, Clark thought. As he looked at the bird looked back. Clark made eye contact, and the creature cocked his head. He couldn't help but compare the movement to that of a curious cat. Clark smiled, trying to appear friendly.
Hello, are you one of the birds?
He didn't seem like the bat, too young, but Clark wanted confirmation. The others quickly looked to where his gaze was focused. The bird looked at them for a second, making sure they didn't move any more than that, then chirped at him. After a second, he rasped, Nightingale.
Hi, Nightingale. I'm Superman. We brought gifts for you and your brothers.
Nightingale seemed to perk up at that. He focused on the bag next to Clark's foot.
This one's for you.
The bird smiled, mouth too wide and teeth too much like knives. He tried not to shiver. Nightingale didn't move closer, so Clark slowly reached towards the bag. He grabbed it with the bird's eyes laser-focused on him, and rolled it at the shadow. Once it was in reach of Nightingale, and out of Clark's, he snatched it up and ripped the paper bag, like a dog shredding a toy. He lifted the yellow and blue field sweater first. Holding it up, he frowned and threw it back at Clark, before reaching for the next one. He smiled again at the one with the funky pattern and quickly jerked it over his head. When it was on, the blue had been smeared a bit over the front, but Nightingale didn't seem to mind.
You don't like this one?
Clark frowned. The happy bird looked at him again, staring into his soul before uttering, "Scarecrow." Superman looked at the sweater, and sure enough, there was a scarecrow in the field. Maybe he didn't like them since he was a bird? He wasn't about to ask, after all. He had still liked the other one. Clark was glad he grabbed both.
Are the other birds here? We have gifts for them, too.
He turned around to show the gifts the others had brought, when he froze. Behind Barry, next to his feet, was a feral-looking 10-year-old. The shredded stuffed animal in his teeth added to the feral look. The League frowned at him for a second, before collectively turning to where he was looking. "What the fuck, kid?" Barry yelled and scrambled away. A growl came from the shadows behind the kid, along with one behind Clark, obviously from the eldest bird. A red man, larger than Nightingale, was crouched a foot away from the boy, as if guarding over him. The man had said the elder two were protective, so this was probably Cardinal. His red hoodie and accents on his costume supported the guess. The new ones had black eyes and hair like Nightwing, other than the white stripe and cardinals that poked out from under the hood. The red made the blood on Cardinal's outfit look a lot more realistic. That and the burned patches made him look like he had just walked out of a fire. The little one's was more of a greenish goo. He must be Magpie or Robin. Based on his fixation with the animals, he guessed Robin, but the shredded one in his mouth made him uncertain. There was a lot more of the green than of the others' colors. "Apologies, young warriors, you just frightened us." Thank Rao for Diana. "You must be Cardinal." The red bird cocked his head. They were definitely brothers. "I brought you a book if you'd like." Cardinal glanced between her and the book warily. Robin had gathered the other stuffed animals, other than the ripped-up alligator, and stuffed them in his costume. He darted behind his bigger brother, hissing at Barry as he did. Diana took a step forward. Each bird froze. She put the book down and then backed up again. Cardinal nabbed the book and gave it to Robin, who had climbed on his back without looking. Nightingale looked mad at having the League between him and the other birds. He slowly inched around them before he was side by side with the other two. Diana shifted to get everyone's attention. Cardinal seemed to like her most of the League, but Nightingale kept his eyes trained on Clark. He was trying not to let it freak him out. They didn't seem bad, but something just made the blue bird's gaze feel like ice running down his spine. "Is Magpie here? We brought him trinkets we thought he would enjoy." Diana smiled again. Nightingale glanced over to Wonder Woman and gave a short, "Sleep." At the same time, an unidentified trill came from a different shadow. Everyone whipped their heads towards it, even the birds. In the moment of confusion, a teen darted towards Ja'an, grabbed the shoebox, and ran to the other birds. It seemed like brothers still acted like brothers, even when they were undead. Nightingale looked at Magpie, betrayed, while Cardinal looked proud. It was the first time he wasn't glaring. Robin continued to glare, but rolled his eyes. Clark thinks, anyway. The black eyes made it a bit hard to tell. Clark took a second to look at the newer bird. His color was a dark yellow, hard to see in the dark. There wasn't much on him. He practically looked clean next to the others. If he wasn't so pale and incredibly skinny, Clark would almost think he was alive. Ignoring the eyes, fangs, and claws, of course. The kid did look extremely small. He could also tell why Nightingale felt like Magpie should be sleeping. The bags under his eyes seemed to take up half his face. Magpie ducked under Nightingale and stuck his face in the shoebox, completely blocking everyone else out as he discovered his new treasure. "We were hoping to speak to Batman, the Bat. Is he around, do you know?" Each bird looked up at Diana and squinted their eyes, each of their mismatching dominoes narrowing. "Why?" Cardinal growled, the first to speak other than the eldest. "We have heard that he is a formidable opponent, and would like to ask him to join us." This seemed to anger the birds. "Take," Robin screeched.
No take!
The two older brothers started growling again, while Magpie ducked closer to Nightingale.
Leave.
Cardinal demanded. We don't...
Leave!
He lunged towards Barry, who was closest to him. Flash yelped and ran behind Arrow.
Not welcome,
the bluebird added, before they disappeared back into the shadows. Clark couldn't keep track of them without a heartbeat or breathing to listen to. They were gone. The League members looked at each other, a bit lost, before heading back to the Hall of Justice. And that is the end of Chapter 3. Author's notes. This one really got away from me. So sorry for the long chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't catch it, Dick didn't like the sweater because of the rogue scarecrow, not because he's a bird, and the alligator reminded Damien of Killer Croc, which is why he ruined it. As always, comments, suggestions, questions, and constructive criticism are welcome. Chapter 4. Summary. The Bat-Boys return home. Author's notes. Holy shit, 174 kudos is amazing. I love y'all, hope you keep enjoying the story. Wrote Chapter 5 instead of listening to my math professor. 3. The Bat family communicates in their own language made of clicks, whistles, etc., so they sound like birds. I have it in italics to show the difference, but I wasn't sure if I should underline it. Let me know if you think that would be easier to read. I'm expecting roughly 7 chapters right now, but I've only written 5, so it could change. Reader's notes, it ended up being 6. Alright, now onto the chapter. Dick watched as Damien climbed up the wall of the Batcave to a hidden crevice. He could see him settle in and fume in the small hideaway that Dick had discovered when he was an only child. He had realized that they weren't going to be able to focus on patrol, and had led his younger brothers home. Robin hadn't let go of Cardinal until they were securely in the hideout. The way Jason was still watching Damien made Dick think that he'd have preferred if the small bird stayed attached to him. Magpie had started to slow as they neared the cave, so Nightingale ended up carrying him for the last leg of the trip. Tim really was supposed to be asleep. Once home, he had set the little bird in the chair by the Bat computer and watched as he was instantly out. He was glad Bruce had told them to stick together. A few notes had been left in window baskets, warning them of strange heroes out during the day. He shuddered to think what could have happened had one of the younger birds run into them alone. Dick was pacing between the Bat computer and the wall, growling. How dare some strangers show up in their city and try and steal their father away? As if a few gifts would ever be enough to rip B away from them. Nightingale knew, however, that he should try and stay calm, for the others' sake. He stopped behind the chair Tim was asleep in and took a deep breath. Tim must be having nightmares again, if he was tired enough to sleep so quickly after their encounter with the Justice League. Dick knew he worried that he'd wake up again one day and be back at Drake Manor, alone. He tried to sleep in the room with the little Magpie when possible, in case he woke up scared. Tonight, he hadn't wanted to let Jason and Damien out alone, not with trespassers in town. He trusted his little brothers, but those two individually were not the most even-tempered of people. Together, they were like dynamite waiting to explode.
Come on, baby bird,
he chirped, scooping up Tim. His throat was a bit sore from just the few words of English he'd spoken. It had been ages since any of them had bothered using the language. Looking back, Dick thinks the last time he'd spoken more than a few words was when he was learning the language, freshly dead. He hadn't known English while he was alive, but he couldn't very well interrogate criminals if he didn't know what they were saying.
Jay, I'm taking Tim Tam to the nest. I'll be back down soon.
Jason nodded, still not looking away from the hole Damien had disappeared into. Tim didn't stir the entire walk up the stairs. He only shifted once Dick finally made it to the master bedroom, where they all slept. A giant circular mattress took up the middle of the room. Bits of black and white peeked through the brightly colored blankets it was covered with. Dick loved the blankets he was gifted. The fact that he could annoy Bruce by covering his emo father in orange and green blankets also helped. He pushed some of Damie's stuffed animals out of the way to make room for Tim. He set the little bird down in the nest, tucking him in gently. Tim squinted a bit, blinking blearily back at Dick.
Don't worry, little bird. Just go back to sleep.
Tim had barely been awake, and with that comforting sentence, he drifted off again. Dick was proud of the progress they'd made. Tim hadn't expected anyone to notice him when he came to live with them, let alone care. Now, he was able to finally trust Dick's assurances without doubt. It had taken a lot of time and effort, but Dick knew it was absolutely worth it in the end. He headed down to talk to Jason about the League situation and wait for B to come home from his own patrol. The boys weren't even supposed to be back yet, but had headed home early after watching the heroes leave. Their dad shouldn't take more than an hour or so, hopefully.
Master Dick, may I ask why you are back home so early?
Trust Alfred to always know what was happening in the manor. Dick was sure the butler had known that they'd entered the cave, if he didn't know they were heading home before that. He probably waited for Dick to come back down from the upstairs bedroom to avoid waking Tim. Everyone knew the bird needed more sleep and relaxation.
Trouble, Alf. The so-called Justice League did end up showing itself. They want to take B.
Alfred raised an eyebrow at that.
I suppose the new sweater is unrelated to that meeting, then?
Dick blushed. He'd completely forgotten about his sweater and all the chaos of emotions he'd experienced. He felt like maybe he should get rid of it. It was from an enemy, after all. But it was also a pretty cool sweater, and Dick liked the design.
I'll need to warn Dad that they plan on trying to steal him away when he gets back.
He was definitely avoiding talking about the sweater. It's not like Jay was about to throw away his new book.
I am heading back to the cave to wait for him.
Very well, young sir.
If your father is late, I do not want you staying up all night. Go to sleep once the sun starts to rise.
I know, Alfie. Dick was nearly 100. He was most certainly not a young sir. Compared to Alfred, though, who knew? Their grandfather was an utter mystery. Dick didn't even think Bruce knew anything about what he was or how old he could be. Reaching the cave again, he saw that neither bird had moved while he was gone. He always had to be the responsible one, didn't he? Not that Dick minded. He loved his little brothers more than anything, even if they were annoying assholes sometimes.
Tim's asleep. I don't think he'll be waking up again until tomorrow night.
Jason grunted. He could be so much like B sometimes. It was why they had a tendency to butt heads. Dick knew Jay loved Tim too, but he took his role as Damien's protector very seriously. The youngest bird had died, more than any of the others had. His home life, before B found out about him, had not been pleasant. Jason had related to Damien's struggles more than anyone else in the family. Bruce and Dick had had loving families when they were alive, and Tim had barely interacted with his. Jason and Damien, however, had loved their families, even as they hurt them. Jason was going to make sure nothing like that ever happened to his baby brother again. Dick sat next to Jason on the table. He didn't know what they were going to do. If the Justice League truly tried to take B away, he wasn't sure the birds could stop them. Batman wouldn't go with them willingly, obviously, but the League had literally flown away. They could survive death, but that didn't mean they could beat up literal aliens. He sat in silence for a while, thinking of future possibilities. It was getting closer to dawn, when Dick felt his little brothers should probably join Tim in the nest. He'd go up too once B came home, or whenever the sun did rise. He wasn't foolish enough to disobey Alfred.
Jay, you should take Baby Bat up to the nest and get some sleep,
he trilled.
What, so we have to go to bed but you don't? No, I'm waiting for Bruce to get back too,
Jason growled, never one to give in without a fight.
Davy will get cramped sleeping up in the hideaway, and I don't want Tim to wake up alone after a nightmare either. I'll head up soon if B isn't back yet. I promise.
Jason sighed.
Fine, but if you're not up in an hour, I'm coming down to drag you to the nest myself.
Of course.
He grinned. Jason did love them all, even if he could have some trouble showing it without resorting to violence. Little Wing climbed up to the hideout to get Damien. It took some coercion to get the small bird out of the crevice. The two older brothers couldn't fit in it anymore, so Jason had to convince Damien to come to the edge before he could grab him. Damien resisted for a second, before clinging to Jason as he had earlier. He was still holding the small stuffed bat by one of his wings. Dick knew he was going to be grumpy and clingy for the next few days. He only had to wait a little over 15 minutes before the Batmobile sped into the cave. Batman looked at Dick as he got out of the car, a bit confused.
Dick, shouldn't you be asleep by now? I didn't mean to make you worry. I just had a little
Dick stopped him before he could start rambling. It was a habit Bruce had when he was worried about one of the birds.
Dad, we need to talk.
And that is the end of Chapter 4. Author's notes. Hope you all enjoyed Chapter 4. I did edit this on my phone, so apologies if there are any typos/errors. Feel free to point them out. As always, comments, suggestions, questions, and constructive criticisms are welcome. Reader's notes from me. I read Chapter 3 a while ago, but it's in the same part as Chapter 4, which I just read. So I don't really have notes, per se, on the reading. But I'm hoping Editing Me does something really cool with the bird noises. Because my plan, currently, hopefully Editing Me does this, is have the types of birds that they are overlaid on top of their speaking parts. So like Dick as Nightingale would have Nightingale birdsong played at the same time that he like whistles or chirps. Same goes for Jason because he's in this chapter with cardinal sounds underneath him. And Bruce would have bat squeaks because I did research before and bat squeaks do sound oddly similar to bird chirps. So I'm going to put bat squeaks for Bruce. Yeah, hopefully that turns out well. And thanks for listening. Bye!